Good evening and welcome to a Friday night of miniature painting. We have a couple of things I want to play around with today. One of them being these small printed, 3D printed replacement pieces for Tsuro. The model was just called Chinese Dragon. So it's not specifically made for Tsuro. I just found them really nice and wanted to do something for some friends who have the game. It actually came about because one of their pieces had been miscolored or was the wrong color or whatever. And yes, they are really tiny. So, but basically I'm just gonna do a very simple job on these. I'm not gonna do a lot of details, maybe a few different colors on the dragon itself and something else on the base, probably just gray. And as I spoke to Jess about a few days ago, I'm then gonna try to encase them in some resin, clear resin, to actually mold and create some more durable playing pieces, because these ones here are gonna be worn down, the tail is gonna break off and all that. And the friends who have the game, they have children playing it, 6 and 10, I think. And they're actually really well-behaved children, so it's not that. It's just they may not think about how fragile a mini like this is. So, but I just noticed, going over them, that we need to do a little bit of cleanup because I was sloppy after printing out these ones. So let's just see how bad it is. Some of the supports from the printing process on these two here, so you can see it. If you look at, it's just behind the head on the right side. Probably from the side, you can probably see the small lump going out. That is a small piece of the support that's used while printing. So I need to cut those off. And that's gonna mess up the priming, the black primer, but that's fine. We'll just redo that part. It's not that bad. So now I really like my magnifying glass lamp, but it is really wobbly. So whenever I touch it, it just kind of shakes back and forth. Also need to do something like this to actually get the model in view. Now this one here, and that wasn't too bad. That wasn't too bad at all. It broke off the right things as far as I can see. And the other one here, I mean, I know I'm supposed to cut it with wire cutters, but that tends to sort of skew everything. And when you're biting into the resin, it tends to skew everything as much as if you're just wiggling it off with your fingers or whatever. So there we go. Yeah. A little worse, actually, because I cut it. I think it went worse on the head. So you are absolutely right. I have no idea what happened to that. What is going on here? Oh, I think maybe I know what it is. I used the camera for something else. And then naturally, so now it's upside down, I know that. We're just gonna go flip. Alright, that's gotta be vertical. There we go. Thank you for letting me know. That looks better. So yeah, so now you can see them. That is still flipped. Oh, that's because I actually, hang on. Yeah, but it was actually mirrored because I had flipped it. I don't want to flip it. I want to rotate it. I'm gonna do there so it actually gets in. So, okay. So this is kind of the part where I go. If I can see this through the magnifying glass that there's something off here, and I can mainly see it because the resin is gray underneath the black primer. But once I get that black again, and it gets encased in resin, any minute now I'm gonna stab myself with this the blade here. Yeah, this is fine. That's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's all fine. So, cool. There we go. No need to do more than necessary. Because otherwise I'm just gonna screw things up. Okay, so one of the other things I've been doing a few days ago was that I took my entire line of paints, or range of whatever, my collection of paint, and shook them up on my vertex shaker. Which was really good, because then everything just gets so much better. A while back I put in small metal balls in all of the small what I call dropper bottles like this. I put in some small metal balls to help shake up all the paint, which does help, but after they've been sitting for a while, it'll still, all the what's called the pigments will just float down to the bottom, and so the bottom will get really thick and the top will basically only be the medium holding the paint, which is obviously not good. I had a brush. You know the feeling when you just pick up a brush and then you get distracted and then you can't find it? So, anywho, one of the reasons I actually got around to fixing up all my paints was that a friend of mine stopped by to try to paint for the first time, which was really, really awesome. And I know she's probably, she mentioned that she put some paint on a miniature when she was like 7 or 8 or something like that. So that's all the painting she's ever done in her life. So for me, it kind of counts as her, painting for the first time. So she did really well. She didn't get through an entire model, mostly because we talked about so many other things and just discussed techniques instead of just, letting her paint. But that was fun. It was a really great exercise. It's great to see new people paint. And I don't think it's the last time she'll ever be painting miniatures. We have a shopping tour planned for next weekend, a week from now, to get her some basic supplies for painting miniatures. So yeah, so art days and more art days to come. I may convince her to jump online at some point and, paint. I told her that all of you guys were really wonderful people. So even the ones lurking in the background, like Kestrel seems to be doing, calling you out for lurking. So anyway, let's just get some paint on, some more primer on here. See, just touch up a few pieces. So basically what I thought about doing was to give these a cenital highlight with the airbrush, which is kind of my sort of standard method for doing stuff like this. Not that I do many game pieces. For Tsuro is not that, but for miniatures, as you know. But I figured that these miniatures are very small, and I actually only want to use the cenital effect for the dragon itself. I don't want it to be on the base. I prefer that to be more well, basically I'm just going to stick to the black and then just dry brush it from here to hell and back with gray to build up that stone look. That can be done in many ways. It can also be done by just going for a gray and shading it down, but since it has some fairly large sort of untextured sides here, shades may not work that well. So I'm just gonna go for dry brushing that one, and I'll just dry brush all of these ones, the remaining ones up, to get kind of the cenital effect. But we're also gonna do something else to have fun. And this is a mini that is kind of sort of finished. And I'm actually gonna make you all watch paint dry, because watching paint dry can be fun. I know it sounds really weird, but trust me, it is not the worst thing that can happen, really. So basically, for that one, we're going to, as I said, watch paint dry, literally. And what we'll be painting it with is first a brown undercoat, or base coat of sorts, and then we'll give it a bit of sorry, just thinning down some paint over here. Then we're going to give it a nice round of one of the Citadel technical colors for creating dirt effects. And it's kind of a thing that has some kind of crackle medium in it that, as the paint dries, it kind of retracts a little bit, or withdraws. I don't really know the exact right word for it, but it basically pulls back a little, causing the paint to crack apart in a very natural looking way, like a dried up riverbed would do. So yeah. But first we're gonna need something other than the black underneath it, because that's yeah, don't need the magnifying glass for that. And I am terrible at thinning paints. Did I ever mention that? I can't seem to get the consistency right. Continuously working on it, trying to get better. I always get either too thick or too lumpy. And when people say that you should get or aim for the same consistency as milk, I can only imagine people who say that have never actually seen milk. Maybe milk straight from the cow, but definitely not, at least not the kind of milk I drink, because that's very thin. And paint that thin is just not gonna flow very well. It's not just that it's translucent. I mean, that's just means you give it a second coat. That's not the problem. It's more the kind of sort of inky, washy feel to it, where it doesn't cover properly. But I mean, on the other hand, what I'm doing here is just paint strokes all over the place, and yeah, I don't know. That's even with a thin paint. I'm not good at this. It's annoying because I kind of sort of used to be. Yeah, I mean, whipping cream, that would be too lumpy, I think, as well. But anyway, this is way too wet, way too blah. But anyway, it doesn't matter because we'll be covering this with other stuff, so I'm not that worried about it. But I mean, this is kind of like, brownish water that I'm just pushing around here. You can see the large blobs. So when I paint in it, it just completely strips away the paint. It doesn't really stick. And this miniature has been primed, so it's not just that I'm painting straight on plastic. It has been primed with black primer, so it does have a surface to bind to. And yet it just kind of scoots around all the place. That's kind of frustrating. I don't really know. But anyway, I'll get it eventually. So yeah, so anyway, what have you been up to, Jess? Working, I guess. Working night shift. I am so happy I don't have to do that. I have in periods when we've been busy at work, I have worked so late that it turned into night, but it was not an actual night shift. So yeah, I do not envy you that, and I definitely don't envy you having to switch up your schedule to fit with when you're working night shifts. So what else? You got out the oil paints. Oh, that's been fun. That I am so glad to hear that. If you have some photos of what you're doing with the oil paints, feel free to share links to them. I'm sure others would be happy to watch. I know I would. Okay, so we're going to dry brush this with a small dry brush, and because of all the small spines it has on its the back of its head, I'm gonna have to be really careful, otherwise they're just gonna break off. Again, that's why I wanted to encase it in resin to protect them. Also means that the dry brushing is going to take a little longer than usual, but I kind of see it on this particular project. I see it more as not the dry brush being just something quick to get over with to be able to paint the minis. I see it as really essential part of the painting process itself for these ones here. Also why I'm actually holding down the snout and just scraping the brush over the head to really minimize the risk of the miniature breaking. So it looks good. So you have 4x4, 4x6 wood panels. So when you say wood panels, does that mean it doesn't have any kind of canvas on? It's just straight on the wood? And posting it on Instagram, I'm really terrible at keeping up to date on Instagram. So I will try to remember to do that because I want to see your oil paintings. It's just not something I really use anymore. But basically the concept here, what I'm going for is to apply the dry brush here, the highlights, and then I think what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna stick to just giving them probably just some watches. I considered doing contrast paints, but I also kind of not always too happy working with the contrast paints. Just like with the speed paints I've worked with, that did not go well for me because I'm not precise enough in my painting to avoid overlapping the different colors, and that means they reactivate and blend together, and that's frustrating. So I'm considering just doing washes to just tint them. I could play around with inks, and now it just hits me that I should actually maybe have checked what color the original pieces are. Nah, can't be bothered. Basically, I want 8 different colors. So I will be looking at the color wheel to maybe get some contrast colors going. Not Citadel contrasts, but actual contrasts. Yeah. And even though one of them is gonna be white, I'm not sure I want to just leave the white one as the what should we call that? Just a dry brush. I may want to give it something more than that. I'm kind of thinking going for some brown as well, and some red, green, yellow, blue, whatever. But hey, I mean, that's the thing. Just to highlight again. Oh, metallics. That would be interesting. Again, if you compare the fully black to the dry brushed one, if the camera can focus. Hang on, that went wrong. That looks more like it. So if I'm sitting here, I need to focus there. Yes. Okay, so you see here, the problem is I've rotated so the camera's upside down, so any kind of moving it around confuses my brain. But I mean, on the one on the left, you can far easier see all the different texture in the snake and the body of the dragon, and you cannot see that on the black one. So anyway, the oil painting you're doing, no canvas and priming with just regular primer. It's nice, especially when working small, to not have to contend with the texture of canvas. And don't worry, I should put some Discord as well, I'm sure. Thank you. I will see them on Discord. And I don't really know if I want to go for metallics on these ones. They're not going to be looking realistic, of course, since the dragons on kind of a stone thingy. So, hang on. The problem with having cats again is that you get cat hair everywhere, even when trying to cover the space I use for priming these miniatures. Cat hair always sneaks in, and then here it's gotten into the primer in a few places, so it's kind of sticking out. And yeah, the detail of the 3D printers are amazing. Oh, the bases. Oh, making the bases metallic would be interesting. So maybe just, that would be good. Making the ridges here metallic, and the rest, maybe just keeping the rest black. And some metallic shine. We'll sort that out. I still have 7 more to dry brush, so... and also... I don't know how to do a marble effect, but I do know that when you just, what's it called? Just dry brush stuff, you can kind of get this effect out. Which looks cool enough at a distance. So, but marble would involve all the lines in the stone itself, and that's not gonna happen, especially at this scale. But I mean, hey, you can do that when you make your own set. Now, as for the 3D printers and quality and details, I have a resin printer because I was curious about 3D printing and where it landed. I've had friends who have gotten the build it yourself kits for filament printers, more or less since they came down in a price range where normal people could afford them. And the thing is that back then it was, the filament printers are good, but it's a different style of printing, and there were so many problems with badly aligned motors and stuff like that, because they depend on motors to move either the bed or the printing head around, whereas the resin printer only moves a plate up and down, and then the models gets extruded from that. Extruded is not the right one. They get sort of built on that plate. Now, the reason that makes it a lot easier is that you only have to move on one axis, as opposed to the filament printers who have to move on 3 axes, going up and down, and then moving either the object or the printing head around. And that just means more small motors that have to work and be aligned. And while they are really precise, I just see so many people reporting errors on them. Besides, the resin printers are far more suited, I think, for miniature printing, because the resin printers, there's a 9 or 11 inch monitor on it, and the one I have has a 2K resolution, which is something wide and something high. I can't remember, but it's basically a very high resolution display. And what it does is it just takes a pixelated picture, essentially a cut through of the model. So just building another layer, and that layer is just a pixel picture that is shown on that screen in the printer. And the light it uses is UV heavy light, which then cures or hardens the resin. So that was a really, really terrible way of explaining it. But basically, you cut the miniature into slices, as it's called. And each slice then is a 2D image. And then you use that 2D image to create a layer of resin that gets hardened. And then you pull up the print plate, pull it down again to just a bit over the other one. Then you make the next layer, and then it binds to the previous layer. And then you just build them up layer by layer by layer. That also means that you can see all the layers when you look at the model. You can sometimes see it. But the printer I have, if I really want to spend a lot of time printing a model, I can go down to a layer width or depth, height, whatever, of 0.01 millimeters. I'm not even going to convert that into inches for anyone, because that is crazy small. And that is 100th of a millimeter. So that is the layer thickness you get, which is just amazing. And then you can really print all the details in miniatures. I printed some a while ago. I was kind of readjusting the printer, and I wanted to print some models that they weren't really that big, but they were kind of tall. And I wanted to save a little bit of time, so I printed them in 0.05 to shave off, a bit of the printing time. And that went really well for the miniatures. I have them in the other room. I'll be printing them as well. But for the bases that I also printed, it was not detailed enough, because they had a lot of small lines and details in the base, some runes carved in the floor and whatnot. And all of that, I mean, it's still visible, so it's still good, but it's really hard to see those details because they kind of got obscured. So even 0.05 millimeters, which is still crazy small, at like a 20th of a millimeter. And but that is still, at a level where it's visible to the naked eye, and you can't get all the details out of at least these models here. Others may have, different results. Other bases would have the details differently, and so on. It's also depends a little bit on how you rotate the model when printing it, and placing the supports and all that. But anyway, long story short, resin printing, super good for miniatures, and best part is it is super easy, because a lot of people, especially when you buy the files for printing, they will actually deliver them pre-supported, as it's called, which means that they will be putting in all the different supports to make sure the miniature don't break. I should have an example of how it looks, but you'll find out if you Google it. But basically a miniature like this one here, when you print it, it's probably angled, so it's not, you know, standing straight up. It's going to be angled a little bit, and then you kind of make scaffolding up, so whenever like the elbow is kind of hanging off into free air, that won't do, because it's not going to be pulled up when you create that layer. It's just going to be a blob of hardened resin floating around in the tank, where you have in the tank of the printer, as it's called, the basin with the resin in. So you create some scaffolding up to hold that one, and then you remove the scaffolding later on. So having them, you know, come pre-supported makes life so much easier. If you just pick up the model, include it into the slicer software, as it's called. There are different types, different tools for that, depending on which printer you have. If you want to pay money for the slicing software or whatever. But basically just analyzes the model, and then it creates a series of 2D images for the printer to use to cure and harden the resin. And just go through it, bringing the print plate up and down until you finally have your miniature. And when I first got the printer, I was, you know, I'm a kind of curious person with these kind of things, so I don't mind messing around a bit with, you know, settings and going into a lot of different menus and looking up blah 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 blah, all of that. When I got the printer, it was almost boringly easy to get it up and running. You basically just have to do a quick calibration to make sure that the printing plate is level with the bottom of the tank, because that otherwise it's gonna be, if it's at an angle, it's not gonna go all the way down, it's gonna go down and actually destroy the screen. So you kind of just manually draw it down a little bit until the right height, and then just go, this is it, done. Move on to the next step, which is printing. Well, pouring in resin, I guess, but yeah. So that's really all you have to do. Tighten a few screws when it's at the right height, so you can zero it in. And I haven't had to reconfigure it in the year I've had it, and from what I understand, you generally don't, because it's sturdy hardware, big nice screws, solid metal attachment thing for the printing plate, all those kind of things. It really just works. I watched a video earlier today by a new YouTuber that I've come across a few times, but haven't watched much. And I saw her, she paints a lot of both Warhammer miniatures, but also sort of other indie developer miniature games, like One Page Rules, as it's called. I think it's called One Page Rules. Anywho, she talked about, you know, when she got her printer and started printing, how easy it was to set up, and, you know, within a couple of hours she had her first miniatures, and that was only a few hours, because that's how long it takes to print a miniature. I mean, something like the one I have here, that one there, they typically take, okay, camera, be nice. They typically take, depending on the resolution, messed that up. Usually it doesn't take, it takes about somewhere between 2-3 hours up to maybe 4 or 5 if it's a slightly larger miniature, if I go up in higher resolution. So I mean, but I mean, the printer is just doing its own thing. You just start it, leave it, well ventilated. Resin is highly toxic. You should add in all those warnings and disclaimers. You really, really don't want to be in the same room when it's printing. Not just because it smells like, ugh, it smells terrible. I haven't actually smelled it that much because I use the breathing mask for it, or what it's called. Not just the ones we've used throughout COVID, but, you know, the actual full double filter things. So yeah, but But yeah, it's toxic, it's dangerous. Don't get it on your skin, don't inhale it, don't drink it. Especially during the curing process where it gets heated. It's just a lot of blah. Well, if you can ventilate the room properly during the printing process and afterwards, then it's fine. I usually run the printer in my bedroom because I don't really use my bedroom during the day, and then I make sure to just open the windows before for a while, an hour at least or so, to really get fresh air in, get all the resin toxic fumes out before going to bed, and that seems to work. So yeah, in other news, I don't know what's been happening in other news in my world. Not a lot. Still just chilling, relaxing, not working, enjoying life, playing a lot of disc golf. I was out again today, and while there, I frequently just look at YouTube videos about whatever, and especially disc golf because I want to improve at it. It's fun at the level where I am, but I want to get better. Who doesn't want that? I mean, even the pro players always try to get better, so it never really ends. And especially in sports like this, where you can compete against yourself and your own score, that's really good, because it's not just about winning over whoever else is playing that day. It is just as much about beating yourself and your own personal records on the course. And so watching a video a few days ago, I kind of went, okay, so this guy's talking about changing his grip and where does he place his thumb in compared to the other fingers holding the disc. And I kind of just went, wait, that is not possible, because you cannot get your thumb that far back. Then when I was out today, I actually sort of tried working a little bit with the techniques he had been introducing. It's basically, I mean, you hold the disc. Do I have something flat? Let's assume this is a disc. So basically just hold it, fan grip, whatever, and then you use the thumb to hold it down. And he kind of went, if you have, the grip like this, I've twisted my hand. He kind of went, oh, but then you can, hold your thumb back here with your ring finger and little finger, or you can hold it up front with your index finger. And I realized that when I'm holding a disc, my thumb is all the way up here. So I literally cannot pull it back and hold it like that. Imagine that there's this disc going in here. I cannot do this. Which then when I came home and looked a bit more at the different videos, I kind of just went, okay, so maybe for the 10 plus years I've been playing disc golf, I've really been holding the disc completely wrong, which would explain so many things about why my throws go wild and come out all wobbly and stuff like that. So yeah, that was a bit disheartening to realize that it's been so many years when I've not done things, you can say that there's no right or wrong thing, but you can also say that there's better or worse ways of doing these things. So yeah, it is a habit, because I got the stats from the UDisc app, which has basically all the courses in the world listed, and it tracks your scores and all that. And I think I threw, registered in that app, I threw about 1,200 throws, and then you have all the extra throws in the warm-up and testing and trying and all the rounds I didn't score. And sometimes, because we're just playing casual, we do the, oh wait, I'm gonna try the same throw with a different disc, and we don't log that. So I've easily cleared 2,500, if not 3 or 4,000 individual throws. I mean, taking a 3-4 hour day where you just practice throwing discs, you end up throwing hundreds of throws, and in all of those, I've held the disc wrong. So now I have to break a habit that's really ingrained after so many years and so many throws. And when I did it up there and just experimented a little bit, I found out that I kind of had to rotate my wrists about 30-35 degrees and hold the disc completely different, so it doesn't go in down here, but more goes up here. And that was really hard on the wrist, because it kind of sort of, when you get cramps from holding something either too tight or the wrong way, I got that within a few throws. I also noticed that it kind of went straight up through my underarm to my elbow, which is not good. I need to be careful about that. Because, you know, sore muscles, I don't care. Sore muscles, you know, stretching exercises, better warm up, more training. That's fine. I need to rotate it even more to get it on the camera, just to show it. But it really does need to rotate 30 degrees, you know, around the axis of my underarm. So anyway, this lovely lady here is about ready to, yeah, it needs a good shake. Ugh. No, this one here, the texture Agrellan Earth from Citadel. I really like that. When it dries up, as I said, it just cracks, it does weird stuff. Also, you don't really want to use a brush, or at least I don't want to use a brush for this. I just use this spatula kind of thing. Why is it not? Oh. Basically what you do is you just slap it on in, I think the thicker the layer, the larger the patches between the cracks will be. This kind of makes sense, because you have more material to work with as it's tightening up. So if you try to make sort of a mix and blend between thick and thin layers. Oh, and yeah, my hand is not too happy holding those discs. So, but yeah, I can learn that. I mean, one of the main problems I've had with my discs that's been annoying is that I either get the nose of the disc pointing a little up, which results in two things. The first one being the disc flying upwards, and you really want to throw them flat. The second thing is that it'll, actually more than one thing, it'll also break itself because it has a higher surface going into the air, which means larger surface means more air resistance, which means you need to apply more power to get to the same speed. So it's going to be flying slower with nose up. There's also something about how it rotates and turns and fades to the left, to the right and left during the flight. That also gets affected a lot by this. So I need to find some days to go into a light field and just destroy my wrist and elbow throwing in a completely new way. That will be fun, right? You know, fun. Okay, so this one is covered. Includes some cat hair. Gonna put a little bit more down here. And now I don't know how well this will work, because I didn't fully shake up this one, and I have not been using this one for a long time, but it should still kind of work. We're also, just because we can, just quickly give it a small tuft of green grass. Let me go for something. Now this is going to be dry brown earth, so we're going to go for not the brightly green colored or the maybe the reddish, but that's a little dark. I want to have a little bit of color and lightness going to it, so we're going to do that. These ones we can just plot down. It's not optimal, but you can just put them down here. That's hopefully gonna stick. One there, and just another one a little bit more to the front, and then it should crack quite nicely around that. So you can see that. Have I ever seen the book nook diorama thing? Yes, I would love to do that. I would like to build an entire scenery. Let me just get this one over. We will remove that one and place her down. And then, as we watch, as I ramble on, more likely, we can keep track of how the paint is drying up and cracking. So yeah. But yeah, the book nooks, I would love to do a diorama. I mean, I've done wargame scenery over the years a couple of times, or many times, mostly back in the 90s when we were still playing more. But I have so many ideas for it, and having a 3D printer as well means that it will be a combination of building the general scene with the normal what's called techniques and methods that I know from building scenery, but then maybe making small lamps or whatever. For some reason I would like to make kind of a sidewalk cafe, the place where we sit with a cup of coffee or tea and actually read a book. I think that would be perfect for a book nook. And I could build the entire kind of house cafe. I could do that just with normal techniques, like foam board or whatever. Maybe do some laser cutting, or with MDF sheets for the side of the building, and then do a lot of 3D printing for lamps, small chairs and tables, things like that. It would be so wonderful, painting it all up, and then of course installing. You're saying yeah, bringing in the lighting. Of course, there should be a lot of LEDs embedded into it as well, and for that I would actually use, can't remember the model of them, but you have this LED system that is not just changing the color of all the lights. You can actually address each individual diode and have that one be whatever color you want, because it has full RGB support to some scale, some resolution. I mean, it is digital, so. But I think it's probably 256 steps for each color, which is insane, really, if you think about it. But you can do that now. Just mount them. What you do is you might mount them in serial, and then there's a protocol that is built into as a small controller in each LED, that when it receives the signal, you send out the signal to it. When it receives it, it just reads those 3 values and then removes them from the stream and sends the rest of it on to the next one. And then there's some timing, and you send, I don't know if you send a start or stop signal or whatever in between frames of data. But basically they kind of configure themselves. You just stream out in order the color of each individual LED, and then they switch the color based on that. Which means that if you install those in your diorama or book nook thing, you can then change each single LED individually. Let's just build a small controller, that you can just attach. You do it through USB or whatever. A couple of simple microcontroller. Probably goes Arduino way to use it, or maybe even better. We're going off in random stories. I've not worked that much with it, but I've worked enough to as I generally try to say, I know enough about it to be dangerous. So I know that for the Arduino, when people starting wanting to add Wi-Fi to those, which is a completely insane idea to a microcontroller, because why would you want a network? Why wouldn't you want a network? You want to send data either this way or that way. But someone found out that the way they did it was that they found a small different microcontroller that could implement all the Wi-Fi stuff, and then they made a small expansion board for the Arduino. And then someone else was creative, probably even the people who did this, just kind of went, well, so if this Wi-Fi is still called a Shield or Wi-Fi expansion board for the Arduino, if that has a microcontroller, well, then we don't really need the Arduino, do we? We can just put our programs directly on the Wi-Fi board, because then we have the Wi-Fi and we have a far smaller and more limited microcontroller than the Arduino. Arduinos today are insane. They're pretty close to actually being computers. Not with a normal operating system, but power-wise, processor-wise, and all that. It's amazing what you get these days. No, but this Wi-Fi board, we just could in itself function as a microcontroller, fully programmable. So for smaller, it's called designs, applications, you wouldn't even need the Arduino, you just need the Wi-Fi board. I really like, that kind of thinking just appeals to me so much. Let's get these into frame. So basically I was thinking about doing that, and then just for the reason I'm mentioning that for the book note is that then, hang on, gotta hydrate, because then you can just make your small book nook continuously just search for or somehow report back or connect to a website. I mean, you can get an IP address just like your computer or phone or whatever would get an IP address on your home network. This is where we get into the whole Internet of Things line of thinking. And then you could just have it pull the configuration from some specific site. I mean, if you have web hosting somewhere or any place you can store something that it can pull, it could even actually be just sharing share a text file on Google Docs or whatever, or Google Drive more likely, or OneDrive for Microsoft, or something similar, Dropbox. And then putting in that link into the controller, it'll pull down a small text file every once in a while, every time it boots up or whenever, and that just that should be more often than that. Maybe let's just go once per minute or whatever, once per second. That would drain resources out of the web service. But from time to time, we'll just check, and then it would read what light should the different, or what color should the different LEDs be. That would be the very simple way of doing it. Me being me, I would obviously just create an online control panel for it. So you can just register all the different things. They can log in with some kind of secret code or password or whatever, so you know that it's you accessing it, or at least your device is accessing it. That's just simple security measures. I mean, it would be read-only, so it's not something I would be terribly concerned about, because yeah, some evil, mean, nasty hackers would be able to read what colors you want your lights on your book note to be. I mean, hacking into it and gaining access to the control part of it and the server and so on, that's a different security aspect. But just reading, going, I am book nook for what should my colors be, and then getting a list of colors. That is not something I consider critical information. That needs to be protected very much. So, but then just do that. There's a bunch of other ways of doing it for more control and more sort of instant changing the colors. But that would be, you know, a place to start. That's really easy to implement. Yeah, and then you can control your book nook. So when you have guests over, you can just pull out your smartphone and tap it a few times, and then blink, your bookshelf changes color. I think that would be pretty neat. I also think this is pretty neat. So, how goes the drying of the paint? Not really cracking yet. It'll come. I hope it'll come, otherwise it'll just look weird. But yeah. Another thing I think would be cool in a book nook would be fluorescent paint. That could again be combined with, you know, lights inside the book nook to, you know, if it was positioned and, you know, made in such a way that you could light up all the fluorescent, you know, the glow in the dark kind of thing. If you could light it up in such a way that it actually keeps glowing for a long period of time, and, you know, get the LEDs that are powerful enough for that, and then you can just have those running, outshining the glow in the dark stuff, and then when you turn off those, the scene lights up in a different way. I'm thinking, you know, a night forest scene or something like that. That might be a thing. You could have kind of fluorescent, you know, what's called bioluminescence. I think that's the word for it, for trees and stuff that glow in the dark. Also some fish, I think really deep sea fish. Yeah, you could do a graffiti scene. There's so many things you can do. This is what I love about crafting things as a hobby, is that anything you can think of, you can make, essentially. Once you get to the things should be floating around intelligently on their own inside the book nook, then it might be a little tricky, and it might require some looking into, you know, how to reverse gravity and other boring stuff like that. But I don't know. Up until that, I mean, breaking the laws of physics is never easy. Besides, you shouldn't do it. It's not nice to physics. I mean, for physicists, more likely, they get so sad when you just break the laws of physics. But, you know, other than that, I mean, if you get an idea for a book cafe, or you can make, I've got the cat running around behind me. You can make a small cat scene. We have a lot of cats climbing around. It's just a matter of getting all the cat miniatures in, and, you know, painting them up, putting them in. I just realized this must be the modern equivalent of doing ships and bottles. Yeah, there you go, Lothlorien style scene. Elven woods, elven forests. That would look awesome. If you don't already know them, I can highly recommend looking at Black Magic Craft on YouTube. They do various kinds of scenery like this, and other things. Really, really inspiring channel to watch. You could also take a look at a thing called Game Geek Scenics. The guy's called Luke something, and he does all sorts of weird stuff, including something I've never tried but would really like to, except that it's a little expensive in Denmark at least. been doing war game terrain, where he does rivers is the word I'm looking for here. And the rivers are, of course, done with clear resin. So just paints in the riverbed and pours in the resin in a couple of layers so it doesn't get too thick for each layer. And it looks so amazing because you can see the 3D effect. I've seen other people, another guy who's, I think it's also called Luke Towan, Towan on YouTube. I've seen him do some spectacular waterfall sceneries, where then before the resin dries up completely, just uses, I think, a straw and just blows into it through the straw to make small waves or ripples on the surface. And then once it's dried up fully, he just highlights it with white to get, you know, sort of the foamy look on the waves or ripples. It looks so amazing. And then of course you have a beautifully built waterfall in the background, and you know, all the scenery and text stuff around it. The grass and the cliffs and all of that as well. It's so amazing. Huh. I had not noticed that this dragon has a small crooked jaw. If I don't know if it's how visible it is, but maybe not. You can see it a little bit because of the white. Kind of the entire left side of the mouth has kind of sort of fallen in on itself during the print process. Probably because the supports were off a little bit. Nerdforge is duly noted. Name kind of rings a bell, but definitely watch it again. I can do... Nope, I do not have my... I generally have a pen lying around. That's a good thing about, you know, having the paper here, is that when you guys come with good suggestions, or I think of something, you just write it on the paper, and then it's down on paper somewhere, and then I remember it better. Now, I spent about an hour doing the first 3, and then 11 or so minutes once I'm done with this on doing the last 5, because I got a little bit more focused and less distracted by weird stuff or strange, just chatting and all that. So I actually think, you know, with the size of these and when they're getting cased, don't think I'm gonna do details on the dragons. I'm just gonna find one color, and moreover, I actually think I am gonna go with the contrast colors. It's gonna be really dark for a lot of them. I don't even know if I have 8 different ones that's gonna look good, but yeah, this one needs a little more. I kind of want to have them at least almost kind of a uniform look to them, so they're not completely off. It's pretty close. So, done with the dry brush. Now, normally when painting, I'm a big fan of cleaning my brushes out often. When dry brushing, that is a really stupid thing to do because it's called dry brushing, and you know, the dry brushes here have a lot of bristles, and once they get wet, they're just not gonna get dry again anytime soon, and then that completely defeats the entire purpose of, you know, dry brushing. So let's clean that one out completely while I sit here and look at my contrast paints. I have green, teal, blue, red, orange, yellow. Gray sounds boring. I have 3 different tones of brown. Only one of them is probably gonna work out well. How much of that? 1, 2, 3, 4. I do have a purple, but that one gets really dark. So I think it's not really gonna come clean through on the models. I could thin it down. Good suggestion. Yeah. Maybe thinning down the purple as well. It's not going to be the same colors as in the game. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 with a brown. That should do it. And now look at that hand again. So much dry brushing, so much paint on my fingers. What about the paint? I think it is. Is it cracking up a little bit? Not really. Okay, so I'm guessing that the paint has gone off in some way, or the texture thingy has gone off. Which is sad, but hey. I just need to stir it properly. The good thing is I can probably just do a layer on top of this one. That should probably also work. But then again, it does take maybe 30, 40 minutes or so before it actually dries out. So it may still be working. In the meantime, let's give a shout out to the musician called Adrian von Ziegler, who is very kind. I think he was Austrian, if I'm not mistaken. Makes a lot of really cool music like what we're hearing right now, and even allows people to use it for streaming, free projects and so on. Go check him out, Adrian von Ziegler. There should be a link in the video description. So also be, if you're watching this on YouTube later, it'll be in the description under there. Got a lot of music on YouTube. It's on Spotify as well. It is absolutely marvelous. I've used it. I'm using it for the stream, obviously. I'm also using it when, role-playing games, board games, because what I really love about, not what I really love about, I really love the music. That's what I love about it. But I really appreciate that each album has the same theme. So you're not gonna have a very powerful song and then a very serene one after that. You'll have kind of like this here. You'll have the Celtic vibe. I think it's the Celtic Collection 1 or 2. Or it'll be more sinister and dark and so on. So it's really, really, really nice to listen to. Now, what do we have? We have a dark green. Again, too dark, I think. Yeah, we have, this is more of a sort of green, real green. Green. Fucking camera focus. I'm guessing it's the white paper that throws it off, but so yeah. Anyway, gonna do this for the first one. We'll see how it goes. I mean, if it doesn't work out, that's the beauty of things. You can just rent a new mini. Yeah. And again, this is not going to be super detailed because it's a small model and it's just going to be a playing piece in a game. It's not going to be for anything resembling, painting contests or anything like that. I just want this dragon to be green. I also want to paint it the right way, not morally or anything like that, but physically with the contrast paints, pulling it in the direction that makes sense for the model, like pulling it along the spikes it has on its head and stuff like that. Makes it so much better. So yeah, so anyway, if anyone is here is lurking in chat, and don't be shy, say hello. We're generally speaking pretty wonderful people, at least my viewers are, except Modifian, who's not here. Modifian is a longtime friend of mine and moderator, and we just take the piss on each other. So it's gonna be a bit of a potty mouth, but it's all in good fun. And she's a wonderful person. So for the rest of you, don't be afraid to say hi. We don't bite. That's still not sort of supported on Twitch, and the worst thing you can do is that worst that can happen is that I absolutely completely mispronounce your name. So what do we have? Yeah, I'm glad I didn't take the darker green here. So I think that was it. That's the thing with the contrast paints, is you kind of only have one go. So you have, or at least you have a very limited time window to go back and fix up things. Because as it dries down, I found it to become kind of rubbery. So if you try to fix it, there's a huge risk that you just kind of pull it apart. The contrast paints, if you don't know, is a kind of a mix between a actual paint and a shading wash or ink. So it kind of pulls into the deep areas of the miniature while only leaving a little bit of pigment up on the raised areas. That's going to give the effect of both highlights and shadows in one go. I'm using the Citadel contrast colors. Other companies have made them, like Army Painter's Speed Paint series that just recently came out. But essentially you get this. Let's see if I can. It's all the way in. I don't know if you can see it. Again, my camera is hanging upside down, so all the movements are reversed for me. It's not super clear that you can actually see the scales. Yeah, maybe from this side here, because the green color pulls into the lines between the scales, while still coloring the entire model green. It just gets a darker green in the recesses, where you also have, of course, less white paint from the dry brush, so it all adds up together. I think that kind of looks cool because you can see that this is a green. It's green, and it's probably going to remain green after the resin. As for the resin, Jess, I don't know if you know that. I know you've worked with resins, and your clear resin. Is there a risk that it actually has a chemical reaction with the paint? Might be an idea to give it a little bit of varnish, I guess. Oh yes, the teal here is kind of cool. It's also very blue. Oh well, that's not a problem because the blue I also have is very blue, so that should be good. Yeah, I mean, the way this one flows, I can tell that I definitely don't want to do a white dragon, because this one practically becomes a white dragon that is shaded with blue, which is a cool effect, I might add. Completely unintentional. I'm just getting, I'm just lucky over here. But that's fine. Luck is a very, very good, it's a very good strategy. It has saved me a lot of times in various games. You cannot see the color here at all. But trust me, it has sort of the teal-ish cyan tint to it. I might give it a second coat once the first one is dried. That will make the color far more visible. Still not seeing a lot of crackling on the other miniature, so probably should have mixed or shook up the texture paint a lot more than I did. That's fine. Lesson learned. So that's this one done. Yeah, that's gonna be the sort of white-ish dragon. Place them over here. Not gonna be visible. Yes. Next up, blue. Let's see, maybe shaking up things. I've not used the contrasts in a long time. I think they also can use with a good shake. If you can hear some kind of buzzing noise in the background, that's the vortex shaker I use to just spin them up far better than I can when I'm just shaking them. Now, for actual mini projects, I think this particular blue one is a little bit too much because it is so blue. But for this, I really, really like it. And of course, there's no such thing as too blue. I mean, if you want to use that, you just use that. Nothing wrong with that at all. It can just look, to me, a little unrealistically, if you have a too saturated color. But that's usually because the miniatures I'm painting are, generally speaking, in some kind of fight or battle or have just come out of that. So they tend to be a little bit more nitty-gritty and not wearing, formal dress uniforms and all the wonderful colors. Sorry about that. Just trying to get the camera to focus better. But yeah, basically just running it in this scenario here with the dragons for Tsuro. And by the way, I've not explained what the game Tsuro is about. Maybe you know it, maybe you don't. If you don't know it, I highly recommend it. It is, I think, all things considered, it is one of my favorite games ever. Because it is very simple to play. It has still has a lot of thinking to it, even though it's simple. So simple rules, easy to get into, but still requires a little bit of thinking. It is not too hard. It's not in no way a heavy game. It takes 15 or so minutes to play, so it's a good filler game. you cannot play it, and or at least I cannot play it for an entire evening. I get tired of it. But I like teaching it to people to show what board games can also be. So a lot of people are still stuck with the classics, and I include games like Settlers of Catan, or Catan as it's probably just called these days. Again, Catan is not a bad game. That's not my beef with it. There are some mechanics that I don't really like. It depends a little bit too much about kind of just who likes who. I mean, it's not a bad mechanic, the trading aspect of it. I mean, do you want to give me this and that for this and that? Now, that kind of trade between players. But it can kind of be a limiting factor once in a while if people just decide that I don't want to trade with that person at all. But so the main thing with Catan that I mentioned is that, as I said, it's not as such a bad game. It's just there's so many better games than that. I just prefer those to Catan. Or maybe I just played way too much Catan over the years, back in the 90s. We used to play it a lot at dormitory I lived in, back at university. But basically the concept of Tsuro is that you are, I don't even know what you are, but you're basically navigating around in this abstract game board where you have like a grid, and each grid has two entry exits on each side, and all the exits they're attached to each other in pairs, which means you draw lines across, and they can go straight over from one side to the other. It can go to the other exit on the opposite side. It can make turns and even loop back directly, so you go out on the same side you came in. If you know the term and concept of Korean sidewalks, it's way more intricate and confusing than that, but it's kind of the same thing. So anywho, you basically draw these tiles as you play, and then you have to play one, and then you move your game piece, your small dragon here. It's very sort of Asian, Chinese dragon themed, the entire game. So just move, and then you place your piece and you move it up here or whatever, and then when it's your turn again, you place it and you move further into the game. If you collide with one of the other players, you both die. If you run off the side, you die. If someone puts down a piece so the path in front of you gets longer, you instantly move and may crash out of the board and die. So you actually have to think ahead a little bit to see where do I end up, where the other people, where are they on the board, where they headed. Should I just stay down this corner? Do I even have the pieces to get out of that corner later on? Of course, you draw new pieces, or one new piece every time you played one. So you have 3 in hand, I think. And then just play along. Oh, this purple is very, very dark. This will turn purple at some point, but it's a very dark purple, so that will not do for this project. I quite simply think you'll just not be able to see it at all. It'll just look black, effectively. So nope, that is a big no on that. I tried thinning it down in this very lovely palette that came with my wet palette. Very neat system. It's just magnets, you can just clamp it on. You have some mixing bowls as well as the wet palette. It's something like the contrast paints don't do well on the wet palette, is my experience. So yeah. So not the purple. Now, if you can hear sort of a rattling sound, that's because I've placed some of the small shaking balls, small metal balls, in this particular paint as well. Now, this one is red. which may come out a little bit more brownish, it looks like. Well, we'll see how it goes. As you no doubt guessed by now, we'll see how it goes is pretty much how I do these things. But hey, it's all about having fun, trying something new, experimenting. You should never be afraid of experimenting when doing art, or in life in general. As long as you don't hurt yourself or anyone else. And if you hurt yourself, well, I guess you're free to do that. Just don't do it too much. And don't do it for the wrong reasons. Do it, experiment, whatever. Be safe. Take care of yourself and take care of others. Okay, so this is actually not a bright red, but it's still cool. It still looks red. It wasn't as brown as I had first feared. So, seems like Jess is headed off for work. So yeah, that is red. Cool. I usually stream for about 2 hours when I do these things, and still half an hour to go. So I may actually finish. And yes, I lick my brushes. I also sometimes call my brushes pencils, because in Danish, they're called pencils. Pencil is the word. More shaking. You're basically having the... Oh, it is cracking. Look, if you look at the spinning miniature, you may be able to see that it is actually cracking a little bit. Let's go here, and then you can see at the edges you have some lines going in. Isn't it marvelous? We have all this technology, and what do we use it for? We make crackling paint. So yeah, I don't just, if you're still here, all that time wasted watching paint dry has finally paid off. So yeah. So on to the next one, moving on to the orange. I know you can't see it because you got the miniature spinning. I just want to leave it up there for a while for people to see the cracks appearing. Because this is the part where you can probably, over the next 5-10 minutes, you'll be able to see the texture paint fully settling in and getting this kind of cracked earth look. So yeah, it's still slow. I mean, the entire process deals with things drying, and that just takes a long time. But we're watching paint dry, and it is not as boring and uneventful as you would think. So if you take nothing else away from this session today, take that away. Sometimes you can get entertainment out of watching paint dry. Now we just need to find a way to make grass grow in interesting ways. Although I guess bamboo is technically a grass and it can grow what? About a meter per day? I think I've been told. If that's a complete hoax and someone has played me for a fool, well, they succeeded, clearly. And also feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I'd actually appreciate it if you did, because I hate being wrong. Not hate in the sense that I want to be right all the time. I just don't want to say things that are not true. So yeah. So in the meantime, we could... Yeah, I'm just gonna leave the miniature spinning to see. Still a little bit of wet texture paint. Meantime, we've gotten the orange one finished up. Moving on to the yellow. Sorry about not speaking. I'm busy shaking up what appears to be 3 completely identical brown contrast paints. However, I know they have some color differences, but I need to compare it to the red and the orange one here to not get it too close to that. Okay, enough of watching paint dry. I hope you can at least, see the effect that's coming through. There's another thing you can do with the texture paints there, and that is to put it on a base and then spray it with an airbrush like crazy with black. I've tried mixing in black color directly with the paint and painting with it. That did not go well for some reason. It didn't really crack properly. I don't know if there's a good reason for that or if it was just unlucky. But the other way, where you kind of just spray black on top of it, you actually get a black sort of crackled earth effect. And I've used that and will be using it again pretty soon when I'm painting some devils and imps, because then on the base underneath, that gets visible through the cracks. Then you paint basically a lava floor. And then it looks like you have the sort of hardened lava on top as the black, and then through the cracks you can see whatever pattern you print, or not print, paint below. And it doesn't have to be a pretty pattern. You can basically just start out with everything being, I don't know, red, for instance, or some sort of fiery orange red, and you make a few patches. Basically just draw a circle that's yellow in one place and so orange and reds. Just make some, not even gradients, just different colored pools or areas on the base underneath it. Once you do that, then when it cracks up, you'll be able to see the different colors that become visible through the cracks. But since you still have a lot of black left, it will actually turn out really well, because it will really look like you have this glowing lava. Hey, Ori! Waving to Ori. If you like watching someone have a lot of fun playing, I say usually horror splatter games like Killing Floor and so on, go check out Origami Girl 95's channel. She's Really, really wonderful person. She's fun to listen to, has a really great sense of humor, and just plays all these games. So go check her out. Better yet, I may be able to do, if I can still remember all of this. There we go. I'm good, thanks. I destroyed my elbow a little bit earlier today playing disc golf. Because I wanted, I found out I've been holding the discs wrong, which is not good. It's not too bad. I just kind of, ripped it a little hard, so it's got a bit of a strain to it. But worse, I have to redo or kind of retrain how I'm throwing or holding the discs when throwing them. It's gonna be a pain because I've been playing for 10 years, just casual, having fun. Now I have to adjust one of the most basic things about it, which is so ingrained in every single reflex, all the muscle memory, all of those things. We're talking tens of thousands of repetitions that I now need to undo and relearn how to do it correctly. But hey, it's a sport called disc golf. Disc as in discus or a frisbee, essentially. But when it was created, the sport, some decades ago, 70s, 80s, 70s, thereabout, I don't actually know. I think frisbee was still a trademark at the time, so they couldn't call it frisbee golf. I know a lot of people refer to it as frisbee golf, but you can't technically. It's basically the same concept as golf. You want to use as few hits, strokes, throws, whatever you want to call it, as few of those as possible. And then instead of having a small hole in the ground, you have a basket with some chains above it, and the disc runs into the chains, falls into the basket. And you count how many strokes you used, and that's it. It's really fun, and my inner physicist goes nuts whenever I see discs flying because it's so much fun. And you can play it at any level. You can I would recommend not getting the cheap kind of beach style discs for it because they fly terribly for this. But you can get some beginner discs for $15. You need maybe 2 of those to get started, which is, I know, it's $30 or so, plus minus. Don't kill me if it's a little bit more. You can get more expensive discs for sure, and you can buy a wide variety of discs. But I would say that starting out with 2 discs, I'll not go into the different kinds and so on, and different flying characteristics and so on. That is a story for another day. But you should be able to get, have a lot of fun with just those two discs. And usually the courses are free to play. A lot of them are in public parks or forests, stuff like that. So they can just show up, and of course there should be room for everyone to, people take turn, wait until the others have cleared the hole, just like I guess on a normal golf course. Never played normal golf. But yeah, and just throw, see how far you get. You go to where your disc landed, you pick it up, you throw from there, and continue. And of course, if you're playing competitive, you don't just pick it up and throw it. You put down some kind of marker or throw a different disc or whatever. So you play from exactly where your first disc ended up. So yeah, it's a cool sport. You get outside, you get some fresh air, you get a nice walk. If you start taking it seriously and really rip through when you're throwing, it will even be a little hard. You can actually feel it in your body when you're done playing. That's not just because I'm old. That's actually because you can feel it. I heard from one of the, I don't think he's a professional disc golfer in the sense that he lives off of it and makes money off of it, but he is really, really good. And when he's played a round, and he's throwing insanely far. He can literally feel it in his body because he tenses up in the entire body and just lets go of that coil, kind of a coil spring your body becomes when you really tense up and then just spin out and snap your arm out, really pull through. So it can get physically exhausting. Or you can just, like I do, take it a little bit more casual. You don't throw as far, but you have fun. Yeah, it can be rough, but it's not. Again, it depends on how much you put into it, just like any other thing. You can go to your local swimming pool and just chill. Oh yeah, I do have the face cam, Ori. I just wanted people to see paint dry for a while as it cracks up, but I think it's more or less gotten to the point where it doesn't crack up anymore. Let's switch back, and you can also actually see what I'm painting. Here we go. We are painting these small Chinese dragons that I made for a game called Tsuro. And yeah, I think I'm gonna leave the last one white-ish. I've been debating. I need 8 different colors. It's playing pieces, replacement playing pieces for a small board game called Tsuro that is very heavy into the Chinese dragon theme. So some of my friends have it, and for some reason 2 of their playing pieces was the same color, which is not a big deal because you can usually remember where you are. It's not a very difficult game for that. But I just got the idea of making these ones, finding a model, printing it, painting them, and then after talking to Jessica, who was stopped by earlier, I got the idea to just encase it in clear resin, so they get more durable and you can actually use them without risk of the tails breaking off and all those things. So that is basically the concept with this. The only thing I need to do, because I'm going to keep this one white, and I'm actually considering just leaving the bases black. Or maybe I should do them gray to get a little bit of brighter color, so it's clearer to see the actual color of the miniature. However, it doesn't come through very well on the camera here. But they are actually more clearly colored in real life than they are on the camera. There's some weird stuff going on with the lighting that I haven't figured out yet. So fortunately, I will not be finishing the bases today anyway, so I have a little time to think about it. So what I can do in the meantime is I will take the teal one here, and just give it one more. Yeah, I mean it is teal, but I want it to really be clearly visible compared to the white one, and right now they're pretty close to each other. You can tell them apart, especially not so much on the camera, especially in real life, but at a distance I can see how the teal could look a little white. So I'm just going to give it another coat here, just to get it a little bit more colorful. And I mean, if you look at the teal here on white paper, it really does. It is a bright teal, but it's a wonderful color for this. So yes, what about you, Ori? What have you been up to? How is life? Oh, see, I'm sorry, Ori. I didn't even see you use some bits before. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. That's kind of you. Not really doing much, you say. Well, I can kind of relate to that. I mean, I kind of somehow feel like I am doing a lot, but I'm mostly just relaxing, which is doing something though. So that is good. Okay, so this second coat here still retained a lot of the sort of brightness to the highlighting areas and the highlighted areas. They're still pretty white-ish, but the deeper ones got a lot more color. So when they're placed next to each other, you can really see that the teal one is teal. Watching Digimon. I am not entirely sure what Digimon is, said the old man. Ah, you're playing Phasmo tomorrow. Phasmo is really fun. Remember, people, subscribe to, well, or follow. It's called follow on Twitch, right? Follow Origami Girl. Subscribe to her if you want as well, of course. But watch her play Phasmogoria. I think the full name of the game. It's the one where you are paranormal investigators searching for different kind of ghosts in houses and trying to figure out if it's this kind or that kind of ghost based on whether it turns cold when it's near and stuff like that, right? So it's an investigator kind of game. I'm not affiliate. You'll get to it. Okay, so cool. Basically, we have 7 minutes left of the time slot I usually allot for streaming. And I have painted the 8 minis I wanted to paint. That's kind of fun. And we even got the texture paint on the small model. So now it's just a matter of figuring out what to do with the bases. And again, see these two here, try to dig them out. They're really close. They're actually also really close in real life. But that one there is clearly orange. Actually also come through on the camera, I can see, and this one is brown. You don't really see the details here that much. I don't know if do we have enough light for this? We do not. I can maybe, just maybe, I can play around a little bit with this. Then everything's overexposed. Yeah, that's fine. Let's do this, and then let's do that. Yep, definitely overexposed. Sorry, I know it's shaking. I am terribly sorry for that. Let's not do auto ISO. Let's do something like this. Seems to be better. Yeah, I think that helped a lot. So now we can actually see the different colors a lot clearer. Oh yeah, that is a lot better. But if you put up the brown, red, and orange, they're pretty similar, pretty close to each other, but they are still distinct colors, and you will be able to see that when playing with them on the board. You can see the teal. Let's just move the blue one out of the way. The teal and the white, still fairly close, but at least the teal now has a lot more color, so it's so much easier to see. And then of course green, blue, and yellow, clearly different colors, and even the yellow next to the orange. Yeah. Okay, so removing the brown, which would kind of go near orange, we can do roughly this, I guess. That's as close as we get to a rainbow with this. Yeah, the red needs to be brighter, but I can't really do that with the colors I have here. I could dry brush it up, I guess. Maybe that will work. True. I mean, one of the pieces in the original game is black. I'm considering just changing the red one to that. I'm just gonna highlight it up, dry brush it up, and see if that does anything for it. What color do we need? Because we want to make it brighter, but we also we really don't want to make it pink. Or do we? I could see a pink dragon work. I can also see this work. So we'll start here, and we can always add more later. We'll start trying to go for actual sort of overexposed blah. Yeah, that is. Ooh, yes. As always, Ori, thank you for your good advice. A dusty rose. I think that might be where we're headed with this. Again, I am not good with the camera settings for this and for streaming and getting the colors through correctly. And overexposing everything just to be able to show the colors just a little bit doesn't help. But I will make a thumbnail for this. So you can see all the colors. I'm far better at controlling the colors when doing actual photography than when doing this. I'm gonna brighten it up just a bit. Not that much. I'm just trying to mix a brighter red that is not pink. And I mean, usually if you don't want to go pink when you're doing the highlights, yep, I think we got our pink dragon by accident here. If you don't want the pink but still want to highlight red, you would usually go for yellow. Blending or mixing the red with the yellow. Oh, this is coming along nicely. Yeah, definitely going for that one. Gonna be a somewhat pinkish dragon, but I think the kids are gonna love that. So, there you go. Let's play around with some more settings. So we'll go down here. Yeah, I mean it's more pink than I was aiming for. But that definitely sets it apart from the one we had here. You see, it's a lot brighter in the color. And oh, do we have? I was thinking of going for this one, but that's a purpley red. That will not do. If I had a red ink, which I don't, I just give it a red ink to make it a little bit more sort of reddish colored. Or maybe Ah, now we're getting creative here. This is what it's all about. Why don't we just actually do a quick normal red highlight on top of the pink? See if we can not make it darker, but change the color instead. Of course, now the dry brush is full of pink paint, so let's really need to put my brushes somewhere where I don't cover up the... No, it might work. I have different sizes of the dry brushes, and for the small minis I really prefer using the small one, the one that's all red here. The other one is a little bit too big to really get into the small, the loop on the tail and stuff like that. But we just completely saturate the brush with red. That should drown out the pink, leaving us with this. What I just did on the head there is not coming through at all. It just re-tinted it back into the red. Now, of course, I cannot get the same to happen on the rest of the miniature, which is always fun. So let's... No, it's working. The thing about dry brushing is that sometimes you just kind of have to trust the process and just keep going, even though you can't clearly see the result now, because the entire concept is that it should be subtle. If you have way too much paint, if you have so much paint on it that you can see it immediately, you probably have too much paint left on the bristles of the brush. If that happens, you're just gonna splotch it all over the model and not only hit the highlighted or the areas that should be highlighted. So this one here, just a couple of quick strokes, and the pink turns into a yellow that is much. I cannot speak. It's getting late and I'm tired, and my linguistic factories go out the window. No, but it's still way brighter than it was before, but it's more of a red color now. And it's still... No, before, when you held it up next to the brown, it was pretty close to the same. But now it's clearly a different color. And it's... in real world here, it is clearly red. And if you put it in between the orange and the brown, it's very clear to see which one is the red one. Orange one could maybe use a little bit more orange. So let's do that as well. Because we quite handily have an orange fire. And yeah, again, just adding just that extra bit of dry brush to it will help clear it up. We just go that is the color I have here on the wet palette is clearly a lot brighter than the one we have on the miniature, and even if it does take a little bit of red from the bristles on the dry brush, it should still be okay. That is great. So, another good rescue by Origami Girl, getting me to go for a brighter red, which was really cool, because the red one got a lot better and made me go for a bit more dry brushing on the orange one, making that, oh yeah, it's coming on so much better now. So it's a lot clearer when I show it to you in a little bit next to the brown. So you can hopefully see that it really cleared it up. And there you go. That's like, what, 2 minutes spent? And now we have... I mean, there's still still close, but every little highlight on from that just brings them apart a little bit. No, still not enough. Maybe that. There you go. And just helps. And again, it's even more clear off camera. I think that is where we will end for today. Thank you all for joining. Let's see if we can find someone to go raid. I'm guessing Mokomate, the brothers Devin and Derek are probably online. So let's see what we can find. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for joining. It has been wonderful having you guys here. Please stay and join us going to watch Mokomate. Thanks for joining.